Last time on Far From Home, I told my friends and family about an 11,000-mile road trip I'm taking with my brother this summer.
Where?
We're going to be driving from London to Mongolia.
Oh my God!
Can you drive from London to Mongolia?
You always read about people who do the Appalachian Trail or people who biked across America, but this is something I've never heard of, and it seems like it's taking that to an even bigger extreme.
I introduced you to our friend Rosie from Australia, who will be joining us on this journey, and we weighed the challenges, risks, and rewards of driving through a rugged, unknown, and unpredictable part of the world in a ridiculously tiny car.
It's going to take us out of our comfort zone, but in a really good way.
I'm Scott Gurian. I've worked in public radio for many years, and I think my brother's probably realized by now that one of the trade-offs of having a reporter in the family is that I'm always documenting something. So I decided early on in our planning process that I would make this podcast to tell the story of our preparations for the trip, as well as our adventures on the journey itself. Over the past year, I've basically been recording everything as we've stumbled around trying to figure out what the hell we're doing. Not surprisingly, when we told people about this trip we were planning, this was often one of the first questions they asked.
What kind of car?
That's part of the question.
A Lada.
What is a Lada?
A Lada is a Russian shitbox. That's exactly it. You got to do it in a Lada. Everybody will know how to fix it because it's so bad.
That's my friend Rob, and in the background, his friend John. I'll confess up front that neither my brother nor I know much of anything about cars or how to fix them, so we figured we'd turn to several of our more knowledgeable friends for advice, as we made probably the most important planning decision of our entire trip, what to drive. But we couldn't choose just anything. There's certain rules, because I guess anyone could just drive through 19 countries in a Land Rover, but that's not enough of an adventure. So part of the rules are the car needs to be under, I think it's 1.2 liters. To put that in context, for those of you who know as little about engine mechanics as I did, most Mini Coopers you see driving around are 1.5 liters, and even many motorcycles have engines larger than 1.2. The fact is, it's hard to even find cars that small here in the States, but they're much more popular in the UK, where we'd be conducting our search. So where do you start?
I'm thinking you need to figure out parts availability, reliability, and where things can get fixed.
Yeah, exactly. Something not too complicated, not too many electronics or anything. It's got to be a little tiny like hatchback or something that have that small of an engine.
Something as close to a world car as possible, like a Honda or something like that. The way I would be looking at this is where you're most likely to break down. You're not going to break down in Europe because you're going to have good roads. The place you're most likely to break down is in the stands. And in Mongolia, you need to find out what the most prevalent car there is and what spare parts is. Because what you're going to find out is, like in Vietnam when I was out there, when I was riding this Russian bike, because it was the Honda Accord of bikes over there, no matter where you were, there was a guy that could fix it. And if they didn't have the parts, there was a guy that could fabricate it. Whereas if you have something more exotic, like you bring some like French car or something like that they're not going to have any parts for, that's going to be an issue.
So that's the first requirement, something common, reliable, and easy to fix. We also decided that we should look for something with a bit of clearance for driving over rugged terrain, and to make sure we get a fuel-injected vehicle, since older cars with carburetors can apparently stall out when they encounter thinner air in higher altitudes. And since our route will take us over the Pamir Mountains in Tajikistan, getting at one place up to 3 miles high, that just might be a problem. Next, we spoke to my brother's friend Adam, who's a car enthusiast and a big advocate of diesel and turbo diesel engines, which he said would give us more power and better mileage than regular gas. Plus, this is something new I learned, he said it would be safer if we decided to bring extra tanks with us.
It's not flammable. You can't set it on fire with a match. And so carrying an amount of diesel on board isn't necessarily inherently dangerous. Diesel combusts when it's squeezed. So unless you find yourself trapped inside a vacuum, you'll probably be all right.
I don't know what we're going to encounter on our trip, actually.
Exactly. Well, this is it. I should have said at the beginning as a disclaimer that all the information that I give you is completely speculative and maybe completely made up.
Since we hear the roads in Central Asia could be pretty awful, and we didn't know quite what to expect, Adam also told us about another benefit of diesel. And if you're like me, this is going to blow your mind.
If you're going to be having to get across rivers and high water levels, there are much fewer electronics on a diesel engine. And so provided your air intake is above the water, a diesel engine will run fully submerged. And if you go on YouTube and type in diesel Humvee or diesel Land Rover underwater, you will see cars that are literally driving above the water is above the roof, and the guys are holding their breath, but the snorkel for the air intake is above the water, and they just keep driving, and they drive out the other end of the river or the lake or whatever they're in.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Well, hopefully we won't have to deal with that. But what about the exhaust? I mean, the muffler, that can't be submerged, can it?
Absolutely. The thing that I implore you to remember when you get out there is, if in doubt, go flat out. So if you get stuck, keep your foot buried on the gas, because the only time that you will get in trouble with the exhaust being submerged is if you let off the gas and it stops blowing air out. Imagine going and diving into a swimming pool and breathing out through your mouth the whole time you were underneath the water. You wouldn't get water back inside your mouth. As soon as you stop breathing air out, the water will start to get back inside, and that's when you're in trouble. So essentially, if you have to ford any kind of open water, then you just need to make sure that you always have your foot on the gas, and you'll be fine. Obviously, provided that everything else is fine and you're not taking water into the engine itself.
Now, remember that our friend Rosie and her friend Jane are going to be caravanning along with us, but they'll be in a separate vehicle, so they were also trying to figure out what to buy. And at the top of Rosie's wish list was something I was thinking about as well.
Obviously, that people in America drive on a different side of the road to people in the UK. Well, all of the countries that we're going to drive on the same side that you guys drive on. So we need a left-hand car drive, because I think it's going to be too hard to be driving on the wrong side of the road, so to speak.
If we had the option, my brother and I totally agree that we'd prefer to avoid the awkwardness of having to drive a car 11,000 miles with the steering wheel on the right. The problem is, left-hand drive cars are expensive and hard to find in the UK, and as non-residents, that's one of the few places in Europe where we could legally purchase and register a vehicle. There's also a practical consideration. Now, think about this. If I'll be driving on the right side in every country along our route after we cross the English Channel, I'd ideally like to have the steering wheel near the center line of the road, so I'll be able to easily see around the vehicle in front of me in case I want to pass. But actually, now that I think about it, forget that thought. We're probably not going to be passing anyone in such a tiny car.
If you're having to go uphill with two people, 1.2 liters means your maximum speed is going to be about 35 miles an hour.
That's my friend Rob's friend, John. He was skeptical about this whole idea from the start.
That actually means that you're going to be burning a lot of gas. Even if it's a gas-efficient vehicle, you're going to be pushing that car hard. With two people, all of your gear going uphill in 1.2 liters, I guarantee you some shit is going to go wrong.
That's part of the adventure, though.
Well, that is
Man,
breaking
just
down along the way.
Let it roll.
Learn AAA in Kazakhstan.
Learn what you can do.
You're going to get Borat.
Learn as much as you can and figure it out along the way. That's how people do it down there.
Yeah.
Right? These people don't have the means. They don't have the ability to buy these great cars. So you know what they do when they break down? They figure it out, man. That's it. You guys are smart. You're well-traveled. You know what you're doing. You'll figure it out.
As we were starting to plan our trip last summer, I spoke with Rosie and my brother Drew to see what they thought. How confident are you that both of our teams will make it all the way to the finish line?
Oh, we'll be fine.
As long as we find a vehicle that is up for the challenge, I would hope we'd be okay. I mean, I don't know how many teams have not made it so far this year. I mean, it's a good handful.
I think at 3 weeks there was 9 teams that had not made it, and there was the car that became a fireball, of course.
Okay, let me jump in here to explain. So the thing about the Mongol Rally is that the standard rules say you have to drive a car with an engine smaller than 1.2 liters, but the organizers will allow exceptions for curiosity value. It has to be terribly creative, though. They specify on their website that they'll no longer accept ambulances, London taxis, or even ice cream trucks, because it's all been done before, believe it or not. They say they might consider double-decker buses, though. In last year's rally, this one team that Rosie mentioned somehow managed to convince the organizers, against their better judgment, to let them drive a vintage Porsche to Mongolia. The car got as far as Turkmenistan before hitting a pothole at 50 miles per hour and going up in flames. Thankfully, no one was injured.
I really feel, and I don't want to overspeak or speak too soon, but I feel like in certain cases, the cars that don't make it are the ones that people try to purchase to sort of just make a joke of the whole thing. You know, like sort of a clown car, something that's just the most ridiculous thing ever. Whereas I think we're all sort of in the mindset of buying a vehicle that, you know, has the highest probability of making it across that treacherous terrain.
I mean, I'm with you absolutely. Why are you going to set yourself up to fail from the from the get-go?
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure driving across Uzbekistan on a ride-on lawnmower or a Zamboni would be fodder for hilarious stories, but we did really want to make it to the finish line, so we gave this some serious thought. And as we looked over our checklist of car requirements, it soon became clear that we simply couldn't have everything we wanted. For starters, finding a car with a steering wheel on the left in the UK was just too difficult, and there weren't many options for diesel or four-wheel drive in a vehicle that small. Plus, we heard that diesel can be in short supply in some of the places we're going, and we didn't want to risk getting stranded in the middle of nowhere with an empty tank. So we did some research and discovered there's one particular car that supposedly has a 100% success rate from past rallies, and it's the most popular vehicle that teams choose to drive to Mongolia each year, the 1-liter Nissan Micra. I asked our car enthusiast friend Adam what he thought about it.
This is the thing, is that basically you either find yourself something that is built to spec and built to do it right, or you man up and you do it in something that you would expect a 55, 60-year-old woman to drive to the supermarket twice a week, and you make a square peg fit a round hole, and a square peg with a reliable engine, and that is what the Nissan Micra is. You know, you might have wheels fall off, you might have bodywork fall off, you can kind of bump it up hills and you can give it death, but it'll probably get you there.
Sounded like a plan. And if we needed any more convincing while we were considering everything, this happened.
Now, David Cameron's been shopping last weekend. He rocked up to a second-hand car dealership in Oxfordshire and paid $1,500 for a Nissan Micra.
That's right, the British Prime Minister of all people bought a used Micra with 92,000 miles for his wife Samantha to drive around town. So we figured, hey, if it's good enough for the First Lady, it's certainly good enough for us. Rosie and Jane purchased a Micra for themselves, and we started looking on our end. And I have to say, it was a little tricky trying to do this from our side of the Atlantic. You see, in order to have time to register the vehicle, get insurance, and everything else we had to do before setting out on our journey, we had to make the purchase in advance, well before either my brother or I planned to arrive in the UK. But of course, we didn't want to buy a car sight unseen. Jane, who lives up by Nottingham, was going to help us, but now she was traveling and wouldn't be around to look. Adam had also offered to assist, but he was in the middle of packing to move from England to California, so that fell through as well. After several other dead ends, we reached out to a different Adam Rowley and his brother James, who live in England and are also doing the Mongol Rally this year. Adam told me the two of them were really excited about going on this adventure, but they were trying to figure out how to cover their costs.
We were really struggling for finance, obviously, because it's quite an expensive trip. So he said, well, there's loads of people from America doing the rally. Why don't we buy some cars for them, help them out, and make a little bit of money per car? So we don't make a huge amount, but we're making loads of friends, and I think personally that's the most important thing.
I spent some time scanning through the online classifieds around London, searching for used cars in reasonably good shape that didn't cost too much. Finally, I found one I liked, a 2001 two-door Nissan Micra with just 64,000 miles. So I sent Adam out to look at it.
I'm just there now. It's on like sort of a side street off the main road. The car's parked outside of some flats.
You see the car right there?
Yeah, it's here now. It's a red Micra. It's pretty nice. It has a teddy bear hanging off the rearview mirror.
Okay. What does the inside look like? Does it look okay?
Inside looks fine. The bodywork looks pretty good. It's a little faded, but good.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of paint on the windscreen wiper, but other than that, it looks fine. I'll just knock on the door and get the guy.
Hello, mate.
Hiya.
You alright?
Adam.
Ali, let me get the car keys. That's
Cool,
the car
sure, no
keys.
worries.
Okay? Come on. Do you want to come in?
Is that all right?
Yeah, yes, certainly.
Fantastic,
Come
thank
on in. You're a guitar player then?
Fun? I am. I've just come from university. I mean, I better explain now. I'm on the phone at the minute to a guy in America because I'm buying a car. This is for him. He's doing a podcast for the radio.
Oh, okay.
So he's just on the phone to record for that.
Hello?
Hello. Hi there. My name is Scott. Who's this I'm talking to?
You're speaking to Ali.
Ali, hey, good to meet you. What's kind of the backstory of this car? This was your vehicle?
I just bought this car recently only. Really and truly, I don't like to sell it because it's a beautiful, lovely car. The only problem I'm selling it, I've lost my job.
Oh.
So I can't afford to bloody pay the insurance. But there is nothing wrong with the car. If I can keep it, I have been paying, honestly, for the last 2 months, I've been paying from my savings to pay for the insurance because I never wanted to let it go. Because I thought, I'll just find a job within a couple of months and that would be it, But unfortunately, that's not the case. I've been applying for jobs, but I haven't had much luck with it. And it's coming to a point when I'm bleeding my savings dry and I just can't do that at the moment.
I told Ali that I was planning on driving his car all the way to Mongolia, a quarter of the way around the Earth, and I asked if he thought it was up for the task.
I'll tell you one thing. I don't know if you're aware of Japanese cars. Nissan is a Japanese car. Nissan don't even bloody get a sweat until it's past 100,000 miles.
Yeah, I wasn't really familiar with Nissan Micras because we don't have them here in the States.
In America, obviously, it's Ford and all that, big, heavy duty vehicles.
Yeah, it's hard to even find cars this small here.
I can imagine. But our British roads are not to be praiseworthy. I know in America you have 4 lanes and all in motorways and all. We just die to have those roads, in here. The best thing about this car, what I like, I'll tell you my opinion. It's got a new battery in it, so you've got no problems with that. It's got 4 brilliant tires. On a full tank, it gives you roughly about 225 miles.
Okay, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm. No problems. Engine is fine because it's only done 60,000 miles. It's got a manual gearbox, which again is good for you because usually you get problems with the automatic transmission.
Right.
I had some guy I know, a friend of mine, he is into racing. He's a professional drifter. And he has one of these for his mother. He said, this is my 3rd engine in the car. Every time I reach 250,000 miles on Micra, I change the engine on it. The car has been with him for 30 years.
Wow. And people have told us also along our route, we're going to be going through Central Asia, through Tajikistan and Turkmenistan and all those places that if we
those
were to...
Those places are full of dust and mud. Then again, this car comes handy for you. Don't mind me, I'm from a country where we believe in these sort of cars. I'm from Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in Pakistan, I drive these kind of cars to do 6 and 8 hours and 10 hours journey. These cars literally can't break down.
That was all pretty convincing, but we still needed to take it for a test drive.
Great, okay. We're going to take a left from here.
Okay.
It's a new clutch, so you will have to...
Oh, it's a new clutch?
It is.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it drives really nicely. Drives really nicely.
Got a sound system as well, which I was
it's got a radio
installed.
as well?
It's got a brilliant radio, actually.
Oh, yeah?
I installed this recently. It's got Bluetooth and everything, so you can connect your phone to it.
Scott, I'm very jealous of you.
That'll be great.
Is that USB as well? Charger?
Everything. Auxiliary, USB, Bluetooth device.
Amazing. Nice. I bought a Volkswagen Polo for another friend in America, and the radio had a CD in it that wouldn't come out, and it was one song on the CD looping all the time.
Adam drove the car around the block a few times, and it seemed promising. It drove smoothly, and considering we were going on a 7-week road trip, that stereo system was totally the icing on the cake.
I'll give you a ring back in a minute, Scott. I'm just going to buy you a car, I think.
Awesome. Okay, I'll let you do your inspection and call me back in a few minutes. Thank you so much, Ali. I appreciate it.
No problem, Scott. It was nice talking to you again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye. Hello?
Hi.
Hey there. So are you done inspecting it?
Yeah, I've had a look. I've paid the money and everything is sorted.
I asked him how he thought our car compared to the 10 other vehicles he's purchased for teams on this year's Mongol rally.
It's the... Ooh, I don't want to say it's the best car we bought, but I think it's one of the best cars we bought.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like we hit the jackpot.
Definitely. He seems like a super genuine guy. It runs fine. It's got a brand new clutch, which is a huge benefit. Yeah, no, it seems like a really, really good car.
So after hearing this, we were feeling pretty good about things. Now that we owned it, Adam drove the car back to his mechanic for a more thorough inspection, and we filed the paperwork to officially transfer the title to my name. We got our international driving licenses and began calling around to get insurance. Then we moved on to the next challenge. When we were considering the features we wanted in a vehicle, several folks had recommended that we get a manual car, since it would be less prone to problems and easier to fix. That sounded like good advice, except for one thing. Neither my brother nor I had any idea how to drive stick. One of the people I spoke to, travel blogger and former rally participant Sherry Ott, gave me this sage advice.
I would probably recommend, in New York or somewhere around here, New Jersey, take some lessons before you go. Because I've driven stick shift my whole life. And being in the middle of Kiev, in traffic, not knowing where you're going, and, I was shifting on the other side, totally stressful. And I wasn't worried about killing the engine, I was just worried about getting through. But my friend Charlie, she didn't know how to drive a stick shift before, and so she took some lessons here, and you're going to have a few really tough days. Like, I can't even imagine going through Istanbul not knowing how to drive a stick shift, but you will get used to it, and by the end, like a week and a half in, you'll be like, no problem.
My friend Rob had offered to teach my brother and me on his old pickup truck, so we gladly accepted.
Okay, so let's just start from nothing, right?
Yeah.
So when you're going to start, you could be in gear or you could be in neutral. Clutch is always in. Turn the key.
So wait, I'm a total idiot. You got the accelerator, you got the brake, and the clutch?
So basically, the faster you're going, the higher the gear that you go into.
That's exactly right. It's very simple. You got to get used to it. It's all a timing thing, and it becomes very second nature once you do it. Okay, start the car up. We're on Hill Training 101. You feel confident?
I don't know, we'll see.
Okay.
That's really difficult. Everything else was fine, but the hill's tough.
Yeah, the hill is going to be your challenge.
Nemesis.
Yeah, but you know what? Find a hill and just do it until you get it. Okay. That's it. It wasn't pretty, but it saved your ass from going back and crashing into somebody and having to call AAA in Tajikistan.
Yeah.
All right?
Which clearly doesn't exist.
Clearly does not exist from what I'm told.
There's a lot going on there. I played drums for a long time. I understand syncopation, like doing different things with your hands and your feet, but this is both your feet and your hands. And
you should be able to do
I
this.
can't.
All right?
Okay.
All right. So I wish I had more time,
No, this is
but I try to be a good teacher.
You're great. So patient.
Let me run.
Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Thanks.
take care.
Thanks.
Anything you need, call me. Scott.
Okay.
Okay.
How you feeling?
Okay. I definitely need some practice, for sure. The hills are the tough part.
Even if we had this down, again, it's still like everything's going to be backwards. We're going to be shifting with the left hand instead of the right hand.
Sure, there's a lot working against us.
What's working for us? Not much, actually.
Not much. I've driven on the opposite side of the road from what you were used to once, but that was in an automatic car, and that in and of itself was pretty stressful. Not so much on the highway, but in a traffic circle. Yeah. That sort of thing. Or being in a small town where there was a lot of traffic was quite stressful, for sure. We're going to be, for the most part, aside from the UK, we're going to be on the right side of the road, which is our normal side of the road, but we're going to be in a car with the steering wheel on the opposite side of the road because it's made for the UK.
Steering wheel on the right side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Made for the left side of the road.
Yeah.
And a stick on the left side, which is normally on the right side, even if we knew how to drive stick, which we don't know how to drive.
Do you feel like you need another refresher course before
Yes.
you go? Yeah.
I mean, we're getting there a bit early. You'll be in the UK well before me. So you just go out to the country and practice stuff.
Yeah, if I could avoid it, I'm not going to dare drive in London.
I'm just picturing you by yourself in like Piccadilly Circus on the wrong side of the road in a stick with the steering wheel and shifter on the other side, freaking out. Like a Chevy Chase movie of some sort.
Yeah, right.
We have a lot to figure out. Yeah. We will. It'll just take some practice. It's part of the adventure, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
We continued preparing for our trip, applying for visas and getting our vaccinations. I had almost forgotten about our Micra until Adam Rowley's brother James called me about a week later with the results of its inspection.
I've got some bad news about the car that we bought for you. The mechanics got it up on the ramp to do the checks. They've changed the oil, and other than it needing a new exhaust, there's quite a lot of rust on the underneath.
Now remember, Adam had said this looked like the best of the 10 cars he had purchased for other rally teams, so this wasn't quite the news I was expecting to hear. How bad is it?
It's not structural, but there's about 3 or 4 quite large holes that are about 3 inches in length. I've had a look under, and it doesn't look great.
He emailed me some photos, and it did look pretty bad. In fact, at first, the mechanic recommended selling or scrapping it and starting over from scratch, unless we were willing to pay for a pretty substantial repair job. But we didn't want to totally throw away the $800 we paid for it unless we had to, so we made sure to consider all our options. We even looked into creating a Frankenstein car by moving our engine to another Micra the garage had lying around, but we weren't sure that would work. Thankfully, after a bunch of messages back and forth and a closer inspection, it eventually appeared that maybe things weren't quite as bad as we originally thought.
The mechanic doesn't seem to think it'll cause you any particular trouble, but there's always the risk of if you hit a rock, the rock will tear out the underneath of your car or something. If you get Matt to weld it up, it'll be as good as new. It'll be as good as any other car that'll be on the rally.
Okay, well, I guess, given our options then, I guess I'll have him go ahead and do the welding then.
Okay, sorry to break the bad news.
No worries. I'm sure it could be worse, so we'll move forward and do what we have to do, I guess.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. One other twist in this story is that shortly after we purchased our vehicle, we realized that, like many small cars in the UK, it doesn't actually have air conditioning, which should make our journey across the Iranian desert in the middle of July kind of interesting. On the next few episodes of this show, I'm hoping to talk a lot more about some of the logistical hurdles we've had to overcome to plan for this trip, and I'd love to hear what all of you are wondering. So if you've got any questions, or if you just want to send me feedback, you can drop me a line at info@farfromhomepodcast.org.
Are you going buddy cars? You going 2 cars?
Yeah, my brother and I are a team, and then we're caravanning along with Rosie and her friend.
Yeah. Try to get 2 of the same cars. That way, if something really hits the fan, you could just steal their parts and keep on going. They come back and their car's
one wheel missing.
Yeah, their car's laying on its brakes and its rotors and just laying on the ground in Kazakhstan, and they roll it along 100 miles down the road.
Thanks to my friends at the Public Radio Exchange for their behind-the-scenes technical support so I could focus on producing great stories. If you're looking for other fun and interesting audio to make your ears educated, entertained, and happy, check them out at prx.org. Coming up next time on Far From Home, my brother and I will learn emergency first aid for our trip. We'll talk about the charity we're supporting, and we'll figure out what the 2 of us vegetarians will eat in the meat-loving countries of Central Asia. We're clearly going to have to bring some of our own food and like a little camping stove or something for cases where my brother and I aren't going to eat stuff like this.
Excuse me, sir. Do you know where I can get some quinoa, please?
Visit my website at farfromhomepodcast.org to sign up for my MailChimp newsletter or follow my adventures on social media. And if you like what you hear, please do me a big favor and write a quick review of the show in the iTunes store to help spread the word. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.
A 1-liter car is made for a country with flat roads, like no hills.